This topic of vaccine hesitancy, I think once supply, and we should say it's a huge accomplishment to even say that at some point we're not going to be talking about a lack of vaccine supply. But the next phase for this White House will likely be the pockets of vaccine resistance. And I'm sure if we probed all the people in our lives, we could find people in our own lives, whether for faith or historically or other reasons, are scared about the vaccine. What do you make of how aggressively they're moving to go and bring cameras with them to showcase shots going in arms and people walking away just fine, and to aggressively and forcefully continue this push to Independence Day?
Yeah, look, Nicole, we always need to do more. I mean, I'm already flooded by WhatsApp, Facebook, social media groups that have propagated so much misinformation about the vaccines that to overcome it, it can't just be done in my office or even in a clinic or hospital setting. We do need a lot more communication around vaccines and what's been promised and has been delivered. No deaths. They prevent death and prevent severe hospitalization. But we also need to do it. We have not acknowledged the health literacy, language. I mean, I'm still trying to explain things and translate it from English to Spanish. That's unacceptable. And so we have to do more. I would love to see, like all prescriptions, something targeted for the solutions we need. And I do think the president knows this and is alluding to this. And he's playing this like kind of chicken game with the states who are trying to say, they're distracting us by saying no passports, no this. We need to get into the parts of Florida, Michigan, Massachusetts, where people are saying no way. And by the way, Nicole, that's a lot of healthcare workers in long-term care settings that are saying, no, I don't want to get the vaccine. So we have to go in. And I think that's where the president can deploy the muscle that he has. He knows it, and you heard him allude to it. I hope he can execute on it.
And you're speaking of sort of muscle and executing on it. I mean, when is someone in the Republican Party going to rise up against those in the Republican Party whose speech and language and their selection of debates are still killing people? I mean, choosing to have a debate about vaccine passports in all states where they're aggressively advocating for voter IDs, for laws that require IDs, is such flagrant hypocrisy. It'd be funny if it didn't have such deadly consequences, AB.
Yeah, I think that they have trouble sort of beating up on Joe Biden. They're looking for a new boogeyman. So that's definitely Dr. Fauci. And then leaning into these sort of fights over lockdown and freedoms, which is going to help Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, run for president in 2024, is also part of this kind of culture war, right? That the government is out to oppress people, and they're going to lock you down and prevent you from working, close all the schools and close forever. And then you'll be forced to take a vaccine and have a passport. And that's just the first step to them, coming and taking over your whole life. So it's part of the culture wars that they're leaning into in an absence of, fighting on policy with Joe Biden. They're fighting a little bit now over the price tag of an infrastructure bill after letting Donald Trump spend whatever he wanted. But you can see that they're grasping for things, for fronts in the political wars, and the culture war seems to be the most resonant one with their voters. And so they're not going to drop it.
The science, the war against science. I think if someone were to parachute down here and wonder what the most sort of destructive force on our planet is, and they landed in this country, they might look at the Republicans. To me, it feels arbitrary. I'm sure it has long roots in their wars against climate science and their wars against reproductive freedom. But this war against COVID science, Olivia, was something you saw up close and personal. And I want to read you something from the New York Times. A new study finds COVID spikes after NFL games with fans. New research submitted to the scientific journal The Lancet in late March suggested that there was a link between the games that had large numbers of fans in the stands and an increase in the number of infections in locales near the stadium. I want to put back up the picture from the Texas Rangers home opener of no COVID restrictions, no crowd restrictions, no COVID protections in place. We'll get that picture back up while we're talking. And you think back to the Trump rallies. I mean, just the first one in July in Tulsa left behind literal carnage. Donald Trump's inauguration had that eerie line. Donald Trump left carnage in the form of spikes in infections everywhere he traveled as a presidential candidate. And I wonder, Olivia, having been in the room when science was rebuffed, how we push against this tide and save more people from getting sick and dying.
Well, there were some words that really struck me as President Biden just spoke, and that was the moral obligation to get the vaccine. And I think that we're basically in a situation where people are neglecting their moral obligation to protect their constituents. They should be doing the right thing by these people that elected them. These leaders, these Republican leaders, should be doing more outreach, should be doing more advocacy. They should be putting their petty politics aside and working closely with the Biden administration, because we all benefit from it as a country. And this is where I will say the Trump administration and many Republican enablers around them failed profusely last summer, where they failed at that obligation and failed to protect lives. And they have an opportunity now that there's a vaccine to get things back on track. And I know they're in a hurry to open up the country. They've been in that hurry since last April, when they wanted to open the country up back at Easter last year. But if they had just listened to the science, we would not be in the situation we're in today. And that is something that people need to remember. And I think Governor Abbott, he was part of that group that opened the state of Texas, and he saw those spikes happen, right? But it's time to take a pause, take a step back, and really kind of do some introspection here as Republican leaders, because these are lives. This isn't petty politics. You can argue about baseball. You can talk about corporations. All that aside, human life matters.
You know, and just to Olivia's point, Dr. Patel, which sort of is so simple, it takes my breath away. Human life matters. What a great campaign for the hosts of Fox News. And I was thinking today when I was jogging, what if they had a campaign where every anchor, Sean Hannity with the jab in his arm, Tucker Carlson with the jab in his arm, what's her name at 10 with the jab in her arm? I mean, it would save lives.
Yeah, so it's so funny you say that. We were talking about how instead of picking on, Brian Williams or trying to talk about other people, why not set an example yourself? We were all very proud in healthcare to roll up our sleeves. We cried. We knew that it was going to be our key to normalcy. We should all be modeling it, because, Nicole, it doesn't matter who you are. Just the act of talking about it and reassuring maybe somebody who's a little nervous, a little hesitant, doesn't want a needle that's so big, and hearing how it feels to go through it, how easy it is for them, can be reassuring. Instead, it's distraction, deflection, and misinformation. And frankly, we're all just tired of it.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.